In this lesson, we are going to determine percentile rank. So we are going to learn the formula to do this and also be able to calculate the percentile rank as well as other variables within this formula. A percentile rank tells you the percentage of values in a set of data that are lower than a given value. We're going to focus on the lower part. That's going to be one of the variables in our formula. The percentile rank formula is PR, which stands for percentile rank, equals L plus 0.5F divided by N, and all of that is multiplied by 100. So D is one of the numbers in the data set. Although D isn't in the formula, D is going to help us to determine some of the other values. So in a data set, in a set of numbers, D just represents one of those specific values. So PR is the percentile rank. L is the number of data items that are less than D. So D, again, is a specific value, and L just represents how many numbers are less than that specific value that we're working with. F is the frequency or number of Ds in the data set. So if D in the data set is the number 5, the frequency is how many 5s are in the actual data set. And N is the number of items in the data set. So if there are 50 numbers that make up the data set, then N is 50 because that's the total number of items. So now we're going to do an example to figure out the percentile rank. A hand-eye coordination test was given to 386 people. Brian was tied with 7 applicants and outscored 333 others. What is his percentile rank? So first we're just going to list out the variables for our formula. So the percentile rank, that's what we're looking for. We also have L, F, and N. So L is the number of applicants that scored less than Brian did. So it says that Brian was tied with 7 applicants and outscored 333 others. So those 333 did worse than him or scored less, so that's the L part. Our frequency is how many people had the score that Brian had. So he was tied with 7 applicants, so 7 people had his score, plus that one extra of Brian. So 7 that tied him plus Brian will give us 8. And then N is how many people actually took this test. So we are told that 386 people took the test. So now let's put this into our formula. So PR equals L plus 0.5F divided by N, and then we multiply this by 100. So L is 333 plus 0.5 times F, which is 8, divided by N, which is 386, and then we multiply it by 100. So to calculate this, the first thing we're going to do is multiply 0.5 times 8, which will give us 4. The second step we do is add the 333 plus 4 to give us 337. Then we want to divide 337 by 386, which will give us 0.87. And then when we multiply 100 by 100, our percent rank will be 87. So he's in the 87th percentile based on this test. So 87% of the applicants did worse than him on the test, and the last 13% did better than him on this test. In this next example, a store sells different sizes of gloves. So the table below indicates the number of pairs of each size sold in the past month. So we have size 6.5, 10 of them were sold, size 7, 25 were sold, and so on and so on. So the top row is just telling us what size of glove there is. The bottom row is telling us how many were sold. So we want to focus on the bottom row for the number that were sold. So for the first question, what is the percentile rank of a pair of size 7.5 gloves? So again, we're just going to list out what we know. So the percentile rank is what we're looking for. We have L, F, and N. So in order to figure these out, we need to do a couple of calculations. So first of all, we're going to add up how many gloves were sold in total. So we're just, again, focusing on the bottom row. When we add up those 6 numbers, we will get 153. So N is 153. F is the frequency. So we're talking about size 7.5 gloves. So how many of those were sold? 57 of those were sold. And the last part, L, stands for how many were less. So less in size. So size 7s and size 6.5s are less than 7.5. So we're going to add the number of those gloves sold, so 10 and 25, to get to 35. So now that we know our variables, we can substitute these into our equation. So percentile rank equals L, which is 35, plus 0.5 times F of 57, divided by N, which is 153, and then we'll multiply it by 100. So first, we want to multiply 0.5 by 57. And that part there will give us 28.5. Next, we want to add 35 plus 28.5 to give us 63.5. Then we're going to divide the 63.5 by 153 and multiply it by 100. So we'll get to 41.5. So we'll round that to 42, which will represent the 42nd percentile. For the next one, what is the percentile rank of a pair of size 9 gloves? So again, we are going to list out what we know. So we are looking for the percentile rank. From the last question, we know that N is 153. That's how many gloves are sold in total. This time the frequency is the size 9 gloves. How many size 9 gloves were sold? So there are 8 of them. And then L is how many gloves smaller than size 9 were sold. And so when we add up the other sizes, we will figure out that this is 145. So substitute your values into the formula. So we have L of 145 plus 0.5 times the frequency of 8 divided by N, which is 153, and then don't forget to multiply by 100. So first we're going to multiply 0.5 times 8. So 145 plus 4. Then we'll add up the 145 and the 4 to get to 149. Divide by 53 and multiply by 100. So our percentile rank is 97. So they size 9 gloves are in the 97th percentile, meaning that 97% of the gloves sold were smaller than size 9, and the other 3 were larger than size 9. In this next example, a study was done to see what the cost is at various physiotherapy clinics for a session. So the costs are listed out. So we want to calculate the percentile rank for $85. So when the cost is $85. So again, we're looking for the percentile rank. And we need to figure out the L, F, and N for our formula. So now each of our data points is a price of how much the physiotherapy clinics cost for a session. So we don't want to add up the dollar amount. You need to keep in mind that these are just data points. So we have the first data point, second, third, fourth, and so on and so on. So there are 15 data points here. So N is going to be 15. So how many prices are we actually looking at? F is the frequency of $85. So how many places charge $85? So just that one place charges $85. So our frequency here is just 1. Now the next part, how many of these places charge less than $85? So we will have 66 is less. So it's 56, 50, 60, 60, 55. Anything that is less than $85. And now we, again, don't want to add those up. We just want to count how many there are. So there are 9 that charge less than $85. So one confusion in this is that because there are prices given to us as our data sets, people want to add those together. But again, we're just looking for how many are lower than $85 and how many are there in total that represents the N piece. So now substitute this into your formula. So PR equals L, which is 9, plus 0.5 times F, which is 1, divided by N, which is 15, and then multiply it by 100. So first, we're going to multiply that 0.5 times 1. Then we're going to add the numerator. So 9 plus 0.5 is just 9.5. Then we'll take the 9.5, divide by 15, and multiply it by 100. So our percent rank for this will be 63. So the percent rank for $85 is in the 63rd percentile. In this last example, John participated in a survey of people's wages in his town. He learned that his wage was in the 70th percentile, 10 others had the same wage as him, and that 180 people were surveyed. So how many people surveyed earned less than John? So this time we're not looking for the percentile rank. We are looking for how many people earned less. So that's going to be the L part in our formula. So we'll take a look at the question and fill in our variables. So our percentile rank is 70. because he's in the 70th percentile. The frequency is how many people had the same wage. So we had 10 others plus John's wage. So that's 10 plus John is going to be 11. And then N is how many people were surveyed, and we are told that 180 people were surveyed. So now in our formula, we start with percent rank, which we know is 70 in this example. And this equals L plus 0.5 times the frequency of 11 divided by N, which is 180, and then we multiply by 100. So we need to solve this equation to figure out what our L is going to be. So we need to undo what's there. So the first thing is to get rid of this multiplying by 100. So we're going to divide out 100 from both sides. So when we do that, we'll get 0.7 equals L plus, we're going to multiply these two together as well. 0.5 times 11 is 5.5. And then our 100s got divided out, so we don't need them anymore. So the next part we want to do is get rid of the 180 in the denominator. So right now that's being divided by 180. So to undo that, we multiply. We do the opposite. We multiply both sides by 180. So when we do that, we will end up with 126 equals L plus 5.5. So the last part is to subtract 5.5 from both sides, which will leave us with 120.5. But we can't have 120.5. We can't have half of a person. So we'll round this up to 121 people. So 121 people earn less than John does. For part B, how many people surveyed earn more than John does? So there are 180 people surveyed. We want to take away 121 for the people that earn less than him. And we want to take away the 11 people that all earn the same amount. So when we do this, we will end up with 48 people earning more than John does.